problem, let's focus on the solution. Because see, right now, we have the power, we have the ability to create institutions within our own community that we control and that benefits us. We can do that. We can create our own school.
Well, how do you intend to gain possession of this land that you want, and how do you intend to get there?
It's a contribution that the black man made in this country, which amounts to 310 years of slave labor, for which we have never been given a dime or a cent, places a burden upon the American white man today, for which the government should pay. Since we cannot live in peace together, mixed up on this continent, the alternative to that solution is to divide a separate part of this country into which our people can migrate, and in which the government, again, should supply us with the machinery and the tools necessary to establish our own independent society and our own independent country. And in this way, it will be creating a solution that the black man himself, our people, ourselves, can bring about if we have that capability. And for your clarification, because this has been brought up, some people say, well, why should the government do this? If this government can send billions of dollars to communist countries like Poland and Yugoslavia and to neutralist countries in Asia and Africa who have never made any contribution whatsoever to the sum net worth of this economy and country, and at the same time, this government feels that it is too much to set about something real to solve the problem for the slaves who made a greater contribution even than your people did, why the government doesn't even deserve to continue to function as a government.
What land is available that's not already possessed by others?
When you came to this country, the land was inhabited by the Indians, and you didn't have any problem then.
Free the land, battle cry in our freedom call. Political prisoners in the system, we say free them all. You hear the call, haters never wanna see you ball. But I'm a freedom fighter, I just wanna see them fall. Standing tall, cause we trapped in the system, they slapped us in prison. Just a part of capitalism. I'm a revolutionary, I adapt to the system. I ain't playing with y'all haters, I come strapped when I kick them.
Black fist in the air as we walk through the door, representing Malcolm X and Assata Shakur. Queen Mother Moore, Batula, Shakur. Fight to free the land is what we doing it for. The struggle, the leader, for Huey, for Mia, Garvey Fred Hampton, General Hamisha, Grandmaster Teacher. He's blasting y'all, you're gonna feel it. The voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
We got to have thinkers that are going to direct us in terms of how we're going to be able to achieve the goal of liberation throughout the world. We have the same problem. That is neo-colonialism. We have no control over any area in which we live. Matter of fact, we have been diminished, and all of those things have happened under the American system of capitalism. That's why we're saying we want to break away and create our own, and have our own self-government, and have our own control over our lives.
You're listening to the Voices of New Afrika, where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. Free the land.
So yeah, welcome to another episode of the Voices of New Afrika, the show where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. We just joined in our social media platform. We've been on live on the radio for a few minutes now, but I'm your host, Brother Prophecy, and as always, I got my comrade, my grandmaster teacher here for Dolly. How you doing, comrade?
We're doing great as we can under the imperialist system that governs us today.
Definitely. And we're gonna jump right into the program. James, you with me? I see he up there. Hey, brother James, you with me? Engineer, yeah. We're about to go into this segment that we like to call Around the World in Black again.
Live from Ida B. Wells City. Spanning from Africa, Asia, all the way to the United Snakes of America. This is Around the World in Black again. It's the news, y'all, what's going on? It's the news, y'all, what's going on? It's the news, y'all, what's going on? It's the news, y'all, what's going on?
This is Around the World in Black again, where we talk about what's been going on in the world throughout the diaspora as well as on the continent. Well, the World Food Program warns that it's about to run out of food for at least 1.4 million people in Chad by January due to a shortage of funds. And this includes aid for hundreds of thousands of people who arrived as refugees fleeing conflicts in Sudan, and mostly, violence was what's going on in the West Darfur region. And they said that the reason they're lacking funds is just because a lack of international interest in what's going on in places like that. I mean, we hear a lot about what's going on in Palestine and the genocide that's going on there, but we're not hearing a lot that's going on the continent, because these things have been happening for Africa and they don't get the attention that it needs. So you have any comment on that?
Yes, I want to say that it's highly important that we talk about that some things like the genocide in Palestine, but it's important to understand that under the neo-colonial system under which Africa has been governed, that Africa is the richest continent on the face of the earth, and had a greater amount of resources being taken out by the West. The West, we're talking about the United States and Europe, basically Europe. And what we have to do is we have to begin, that's why overall, like when a few years ago, well, more than a few years ago, but in 1974, when there was a famine in Ethiopia and the children were dying in Ethiopia, many groups came together. AfriCare became an organization that mobilized our community to deal with the hunger and starvation in the continent of Africa. And so therefore we need in our community, from the so-called different religious group, church and mosque, or whatever you want to call yourself, to begin to raise funds so that we can begin to try to feed our people, try to do the things we can and resources from here, even out and so in that day, many people, including people who were on welfare, were given monies to whatever limited resources they had to AfriCare. I don't know whether AfriCare still exists or not, but we need to create something that is going to allow us, because it's in our interest to understand that this is a part of the phenomena of our struggle. When we said a new Africa and independent movement, we also have a foreign policy. Our foreign policy is Pan-Africanism, which is going to lead us to be able to help even from here, from our standpoint, where we still have problems of crisis of food here in the United States, but we can also become a part of the overall movement from the Western Hemisphere to do those things to prevent those kind of situations from reoccurring. And so even when we talk about it, that is why, later on, we'll talk about revolutionary nationalism and other kinds of ideologies that will lead us to come to unite ourselves so that we can begin to do those things that can help our people, but especially our people who are in emergency. So even when we deal with Chad, the fact that they're going to Chad, which is another African country, from Sudan, which is another African country, it says that we have to pull ourselves together to organize whatever resources we can, and we can do that from here.
Definitely. And I think it's really important, emphasizing what you said, that we take on the responsibility of taking care of our people, because you look at these organizations like the UN, and although on the surface they might seem like they're doing good things, and maybe and I'm not saying that they're just everything is just the boogeyman and that everybody's out to do destructive things, but these type of international organizations, which are really puppets for the United States of America, have been major tools in continuing to colonize and exploit the world. So when we depend on these institutions that are controlled by the colonizer, then we open ourselves up to be exploited. That's why it's really important that we take the responsibility of taking care of ourselves and taking care of our people here in the United States and abroad. United Snakes, But moving on. So the Justice Department, the Justice Department announced November 8th that they are opening an investigation into the city of Lexington, Mississippi, and the Lexington Police Department. Lexington is a town of approximately 1,600 people, located about an hour away from Mega Elvisville, Jackson, Mississippi. Now, the people apparently down in Lexington, is in many places in America, have been basically terrorized by the police department. They've been running terror. They harassed the African people down there. They brutalized them, oppressed them for many, many, many years, many decades, centuries. And finally, it's caught up to the point where there's actually going to be an investigation now. The the Justice Department has actually had several investigations of police departments all over America, including right here in Memphis, Tennessee, after some of the things that happened with Tyrese Nichols and other individuals who have been brutalized by the police. So I guess this is an interesting thing. Just another reminder that we are, like we talked about last week, we live in communities that are occupied by a military force, a well-trained, well-funded military force that is designed to maintain the status quo. What you had any comments?
Yes. So our people everywhere are living under terror. Terror by the police forces that emerged from in the United States from the people who were the enforcers to keep slavery going.
Slave patrols.
You're right, the patrollers. And sometimes we call them patrollers.
Yeah.
The word patroller comes from the word patrollers. Mm-hmm. And at the end in 1865, at the end of child slavery, they created the police forces. Because there was no police force in the South in particular, during this period of time. And the patroller continued, and they created a police force to force us back on the plantations, in 1865. And then during the Reconstruction era, from 1865 up until 1877, there was terror. We were being terrorized by forces. So if you didn't wasn't employed by the master or anything like that, they created laws they called like loitering, mm-hmm. which meant that you couldn't be on the street, and they're gonna put you in jail or put you on the plantation to work off whatever fine or whatever and so ultimately our people wound up back on the plantation, because there were no jobs, there were no forms of income, economics for us at the end of slavery. So therefore, so when you look at Mississippi, and like Mississippi as a whole, there are so many places that are up under so-called U.S. Justice Department investigation. But that's not, that's not just in Mississippi. A replica of that is in Louisiana. A replica of that is in Alabama. A replica of that is in Georgia. The replica of that is in South Carolina, in Tennessee, and all the other states, that we are still, because half of the population of our population, the New African population, is still and more than half is still in the so-called Confederate States of America. So when we look at that, and we got to, and so, but the people are basically organizing to put pressure. That's why the U.S. government comes in. The so-called Justice Department comes in, because the people are putting pressure and organizing. And once we organize, then we put pressure for them to so-called enforce their laws. And we know from our standpoint that there's no remedy. We can't be keep on talking about doing remedies. That's why we must separate ourselves from this system so that we can create our own system of justice that will allow us to take control of our own communities and solve the problems in our own community under our own governance. That's what the African independence movement is all about.
Definitely. Interesting thing how you brought up that how the police, the development of the police department follows the enslavement of African people when it was created as a means to enforce the rules of the plantation, and ultimately now is to maintain and make sure that African people stay in our quote unquote place. The plantations are the projects are the so-called hood or whatever that is. But you look at law enforcement in general in America, and it follows a similar path. You study this system of oppression, and you find the parallels. The prison system, it really rose and developed to where we see it today after enslavement, after 1865, because once you had individuals who are no longer bound to the plantation, and they still wanted the system to maintain, to continue to flourish, because it was based on the exploitation of African people for free labor. Well, they created laws that lock people up so they can be then utilized as free labor. And that's when you saw the rise of the prison. That's when you see the rise of the prison. And today it's still the same. Even like we say all the time in the Constitution, the 13th Amendment, it only abolished slavery for individuals, but not for individuals who were convicted of a crime, convicted of a felon. So prisoners today, legally by the Constitution, can be enslaved. And you see slave labor in the prison system now. The prison is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. All type of corporations, Fortune 500 groups are in the prison system. We see that, and you can look at the death penalty, the rise of the death penalty. You didn't see that until you saw the decline of lynching,
right?
Because for 100 years after slavery was over, it pretty much was a tradition of lynching our people. That was big time. They used to have postcards of African men and women being burnt alive, and they have pictures and posing by dead bodies, and they will send them through the mail, the U.S. Post Office. And I know it's one real famous. It was a brother who was burnt alive. Just you couldn't even recognize him as a human being anymore. And a guy sent it to his father, I believe. He was like, "Hey, Dad, we had Negro barbecue today." And I mean, these are the type of things. But once lynching began to fade out, then you saw the rise of the death penalty. So justice in America in general has followed this path. You want to pick it up while I get to
it? Yes. I want to say that first of all, if we look at the name of the prisons in the United States, Angola was a sugar plantation. Parchment in Mississippi was a plantation. So if we look at the names of the prisons, the large prison that we have been sent to, we'll find that these are plantations, and we were forced to work and do farm labor, in many of these prisons. And so when we look at the development of prisons and mass imprisonment, this started shortly after 1865, and so once we began to look at that and understand and lynching didn't just fade away. Lynching basically was fought against, so movement basically, forced so-called laws to come into place that demanded that these laws be enforced to prevent illegal. But we have legal lynching now. The death penalty is part of the legal lynching solution, and so we are still being lynched in legally, and they're putting our children, I don't care what kind of crime or whatever, into adult prisons, and creating a situation by which to divide up the family and to keep the family trying to take care of the people that have been put in prison from their families, and putting fathers into prison, and putting our sons and grandsons in prison, at early as 13 or 14 years old, given adult sentences for violations of so-called law. And don't forget that many of our people are in prison under the so-called marijuana laws, which, and now marijuana has been legalized in so many states of the United States. But it's criminal to make marijuana a drug on a level of heroin and cocaine and other hard drugs, and
opioids,
and to the point of where our people are in prison, and to the point of not being able to take care of the needs of their families. That's the reason that we are looking at this thing. We're saying we must separate from this system. We must create our own system of laws and other things that we're going to do to take care of the problems in our community, because these forces are not set up to correct anything in our community, particularly if we're talking about even when you put somebody, it has no such thing as correction. It's basically punishment, and what we have is collective punishment and what's called a mass imprisonment.
Definitely. So we're gonna continue on with the show. I mean, we could be talking about things that's going on all day, because I think just another one of those officers that murdered Breonna Taylor. Just I think it was a mistrial. That's what happened. It was a mistrial. Yep.
And then the guy that killed the brother, the police officer, that got arrested, got put in prison.
Oh yeah, Chauvin.
Right.
Chauvin, Derek Chauvin, the guy who murdered George Floyd. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I'm glad you remember. I forgot about that. Yeah, he was stabbed in prison. So I guess some people can say it's a sad thing. I don't. Yeah, they got him. And I think he's gonna survive, but he was in critical condition. But yeah, somebody put in their work.
They sent him to a medium prison in Arizona.
It was like one of many a medium security prisons, because before he was just in solitary confinement. And they had him in that medium security prison, and he was, but yeah, somebody got to him, and one, I guess security needed to be a little stronger for him. But yeah. So big ups to whoever did that. But we're gonna go on with the show, and we're gonna talk about a term of the day. We're gonna get into this New African term of the day right here.
From capitalism, imperialism, dialectical, historical materialism. This is the New African term of the week.
New African term of the week, and today we're going to talk about a good one. The term of the week is none other than culture. So, Grandmaster Teacher, what is culture?
Okay, culture is a way of a life of a people. It's all the things that people create, and culture comes from history, your history, and we have always been told that that our culture has been erased, and we have been totally and completely brainwashed. But even the European historians have put out that Africanism remain, you know, in our lives, and we should know this because, like the first churches and stuff that we created here in the United States, had African in it, the African Baptist Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the African, names were put into the church, and so. And one of the oldest churches, the African Methodist Episcopal Church by Richard Allen and Absalom Jones. They create and those churches, they didn't just exist as churches or places of worship. They existed as movement creators. And the African Methodist Episcopal Church from the 1830s to the 1850s, had conventions and stuff that dealt with slavery, dealt with the abolishment of slavery and things like that. And but what the main thing is that the African culture has been attacked by the Europeans throughout the world. So when they went to Africa, we don't the cultural phenomenon that we are looking at in terms of Africa is an arrested development of our culture. In other words, there are attacks being made right now by irreligious forces, that they call, sometimes they say Al Qaeda. They're attacking and trying and going to places like Timbuktu and trying to destroy, the African cultural places where we had the information still there, but we still don't have control. And so even when we look at the division of Africans throughout the world, we see that on our continent of Africa, we do not have control, over the development of our culture and our resources or anything like that, institutions. And so we are still being dominated by foreign forces, foreign culture, basically European culture that or any culture that has more power than because we don't have power. Because we don't have power, that's why when we want to talk about our culture here in terms of saying, that's why we said New African. Because really, it has to be a new African culture throughout. It has to be an international, force so that we can gain control over our minds. And like culture is the development of the mind. Basically, when it comes down to us being able to control ourselves and get power in the world. And Africa is the weakest, continent in terms of power. The African countries that have been created are not even on that, so-called UN Security Council. But we do a lot. African countries do a lot in the so-called General Assembly in calling for, the release of their resources and calling for reparations. And one thing in terms of what we do, that's what the land question comes to be culture, because culture develops the land. Culture develops the land in our own form. Just like, for example, even if we talk about our enemies, the European Union, is a cultural phenomenon. Not only a cultural phenomenon, because everything comes from economics, politics, and all that comes from culture. And once we understand that, and they have got us caught up. Do I want to talk about a revolutionary?
Yeah, we'll get that. We'll get that in a minute.
Okay, so when we look at culture, it's our way of life. It's a way of life that we have decided and determined from our history. And our history is not just the present, not just the past, but it's also the future. And once we don't understand that once we understand what our culture, how our culture is configured, and that it's going to be a new culture, and that new culture is going to bring us to liberating African people throughout the world.
Yeah, definitely. You said a lot of important things that I wanted to kind of reiterate. I mean, one thing, you have to understand how important culture is to a people, to a nation, to a group. Oh, my bad. People want to call me. Stop calling me. I'm online, y'all. Oh, but yeah, like I said, people. Sorry, y'all. This is live. This is live. Y'all out there, stop calling right now. I will call you back later. But like I said, culture is extremely important to a group of people, a nation, or whatnot, because culture is one of the biggest determining factor of the collective behavior of a people. Culture determines how you respond to things. That's why people who have power over us has influenced our culture in a negative way. Like I say, our culture is way too powerful for them to ever erase and completely get rid of. They understand that. And in fact, they understand it so much that they take elements of our culture and they use it and exploit it and make money off of it. You know, and that's the very nature of this system, is based on exploitation. But culture is extremely important when you have to understand, like during the period of enslavement, what happened to our culture is they embedded a dependency, a culture of dependency, where on the plantation, where if you needed clothes, you had to go to get it from the slave master. Needed a place to stay, they gave us a place to stay. What to do? All of these things, although they were all brutal, they were all oppressive and exploitive. It created a culture of dependency. So when we look at even like a lot of the so-called leaders, when they go out and they say we want to fight for black people, so-called black people in America, we've been conditioned in fighting for black people, African people in America, means to assimilate into a society and to continue to depend on a power structure that is exploiting us. That's why you said we need a new African culture, a culture that is based in the independence, is based on the principles of the Nguzo Saba, based on unity, on self-determination, collective work, cooperative economics, using our creativity and having faith in our struggle. And I think it's one I missed. Which one did I miss? Purpose, understanding our purpose. So we have to have a culture that informs us and promotes true liberation for our people, because we kind of adopted elements of the colonizers' culture, which is designed to continue the exploitation of our people and upheld their system of oppression. And that's detrimental, because if you think about it, if you think about what's the possibility of us having a new African culture? Well, we got a lot of people in hip hop for the last 50-year anniversary of hip hop. A lot of African people have made a lot of money in hip hop, but those people are not thinking about, well, you know what? We got all this money. We have all this influence. We have all this power. You know what? Let's take control of our community. Let's take control of everything. Let's take control. You have a lot of people in the NBA make a lot of money, but we're not thinking in terms of let's take control of our community. Let's use that money. I saw a podcast the other day where two NBA guys was thinking. He was just talking like about how they have to use this basketball facility, and he said, "Well, man, we make all this money. Why haven't we just bought our own facility so we wouldn't be dependent on people?" And I was like, yeah, you starting to get it. We can do for ourselves. We've done for ourselves, and we've been very successful. A lot of times when I bring up places like Rosewood and Black Wall Street, people like to say, well, yeah, but we was attacked and we was destroyed, and I understand that. But that doesn't mean that we just go away from that and we say, well, no, we don't try that anymore, because as time moves on, conditions change. The conditions that exist today are not necessarily the same conditions that existed during the period of Black Wall Street. So we don't just give up on those things, because that is the key to the solution. That's the key. That's the solution. That's why they were destroyed, because that's the solution, and the power structure knew that. But I'm gonna wrap that up, because we do need to get to the conversation. Did you want to say anything before we move on?
Okay. Yes. So culture unites a people, brings a people together, and society. It creates a society. we're not going to be able to have a full development of our culture under the capitalist system. The capitalist system does everything it can throughout the world to delimit the amounts of people to be able to take advantage of their cultural, inheritance. And so therefore, I think it's important that what you just raised about the class people, the different classes that have been able to get resources we want to get the progressive elements of those, of that class to participate in uniting our community.
Definitely. Now, that leads us to our main topic of the day. We want to talk about cultural nationalism versus revolutionary nationalism. So, what are we talking about?
So here's what we like to do, because we're dealing with history.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a struggle in the 1960s up until the 1980s that dealt with revolutionary nationalism versus cultural nationalism. Right now it's something that is been let's say eliminated in terms of, because the cultural forces were people who just said, oh, we need to just dress like African, have African clothes. And we can become part of this American culture, and we can just get our women to walk behind, 2 steps behind the man, and all those kinds of things. So the Black Panther Party basically waged war against this conception of cultural nationalism, and came up with the term revolutionary nationalism. Well, revolutionary nationalism is saying it's a political term. It's a term that we have to organize to overthrow, to build a revolution, so that we can change, the society, to get control of our communities, to politically get control of our community. But let me say this: within everything that we're talking about, there's some dialectics, and so therefore the question and the notion of culture. It should not have been used to criticize everybody that was trying to exhibit our culture, and a mistake was made, often in terms of that created a split in the movement. But the revolutionary nationalists actually basically won in terms of organizing our people to talk about power, talking about power to the people, power to Black people, Black power to Black people, and all those things. And so, but let me say this: what we are talking about is, because our culture has been arrested throughout the world. The Indugo Saba, which has the political elements of revolutionary nationalism contained into it, as well as the cultural element. So we have a merger of. Okay. So the other thing was that. These terms became limited to having a struggle or split in the Black community. But then we find that the revolutionary nationalists did not really go all the way to socialism. And so therefore certain forces, we call them ideological imperialists. That is, the white people that were in the white community that said they were communists, said they were socialists, were coming in to take over our community. So therefore, we emerged from revolutionary nationalism to understanding that socialism is the base, that nationalism is an objective and not an ideology. Cultural nationalism is not an ideology. It cannot be, so we're not dealing with, ideological difference when it comes down to that, because here we are today understanding that the new African, and that's a cultural term, is going to be also a political term, also an economic term, because we not understand that socialism is the basis of our culture. We go back to our culture and we can see that collectivism was a principle within the culture of Africa, of Africans throughout the world. And so collectivism has brought us to a point of where we're going to understand that not only are our objective is nationalism, not only is our objective Pan-Africanism, but But our goal, ultimate goal, is to create a new economic system that makes no distinction among the classes of people that exist in our community, and we're going to become united along with other forces in the world to be able to do those things. So, but that period of time in which we had that battle, many people who call themselves cultural nationalists became revolutionary nationalists, such as Imamo Baraka, who was a poet, you know, even though he moved from that backward cultural phenomenon that they have interpreted as of Africa being, African women need to walk behind, uh, uh, black African men, and so that was defeated. That's been defeated. That's been completely defeated. And now, when we understand, and revolutionary nationalism won the battle, that battle, and that was a great particular battle because that was creating confusion in our community. And once the cultural nationalists became defeated in terms of, because they didn't have any action. There was no action in their, even in their cultural adoption of so what they call certain African so-called traits, but which were not African. Really, it was reactionary.
Mm. Oh, well put, well put. So in basic cultural nationalism is to me it has always been something that has been more about an appearance.
Mhm.
You
Exactly.
look a certain way, you kind of act a certain way, maybe talk a certain way, adopt certain customs, certain rituals or whatever, or maybe even a belief system, but it's not really about active program to gain tangible results in your community. It's not about gaining liberation. It's not about getting land, independent self-determination. And you actually can see, and I don't even know if they particularly use the term to describe themselves, but you see individuals who kind of fit into that mold today. You'll learn about some African history. You'll wear dashiki. You'll do maybe some traditional African things, and you might learn some African history, some African culture, but we're not advocating for any type of movement. We're not a part of any organized revolutionary organization that's actually fighting for change. And we have to understand a distinction, because until I came into the New African Revolution, the New African independence movement, I didn't really understand the difference. I just knew, I knew that there are people who had the mindset that you are indoctrinated into when you're just coming up through the system, and then people who knew more, and I just lumped everybody into the same category, and I didn't understand that. Well, you know what? You got a whole lot of people who know a lot about African history, can make a good speech, but they're not trying to do anything to actually bring about any concrete change. But revolutionary nationalists, we're actually struggling. We're trying to gain a nation. We're trying to gain land. We're trying to change the economic system. We're trying to change the material conditions in our community, in our world, in essence. So yeah, that's definitely extremely important to understand the difference. And I always, say that to people, because you meet a lot of people who are quote unquote conscious. A lot of people who are in the conscious community, which is a beautiful thing. But just gaining consciousness, that's a step. The question is, what you're going to do with that consciousness? What you're going to do with your knowledge? And I think it's correct, because it really shouldn't be a division between our means to attack people who adopt African culture, because that's a beautiful thing to actually adopt African culture. But we can't be mistaken and think that, just because you wear a dashiki or change your name and you learn a couple of Swahili words, that's actually what's changing the condition of your people. No, that just changes your outward appearance. It changes, it changes certain. It's a good thing. I think it's a positive thing, but that's not changing. That's not changing the power structure. That's not changing the power relationship. You still have people in power who are benefiting from the exploitation of your people, regardless of whether you have on a three-piece suit or a dashiki. So yeah, you go for it.
Yeah. So I want to say this. I think it's important that we do adopt our African culture even close, because even in West Africa, some people have visited West Africa. I haven't been to West Africa, but in Ghana and certain places, they have what they call secondhand store clothes. Buying European clothes that's been shipped off. Because they have what they call a surplus. And many of the African people, cannot afford their own clothing that they created themselves. So it's important that we begin to understand that culture is important. That even the phenomenon of clothing or whatever, or the phenomenon of a natural hair, is important. Because or dreads or whatever you want to call it. But it is not the whole, and I think this is the point. And so, and we need to stop criticizing people that because they're wearing African clothes and they're not doing it. They've already made a step, So what we got to say is you got another step to make, If you wear African clothes, or you learn the African language, or there's another step that how do we organize our people? How do we organize our community? How do we get power? How do we control the forces within our community so that it will benefit us? And that's the ultimate cultural thing. But Africa, is suffering from a lack of what they call it, understanding their own culture.
Yeah.
To the point.
Great point. Yeah.
So I've said this is the kind of thing, and I've said hooray to organizations that have Kwanzaa organizations that are doing things, going to the prisons and doing things, so we got to be important to understand. It's important that we understand that this split has been taken away.
We're gonna have to wrap up the radio portion.
Yes.
We always end the show with our political prisoner shout out.
This is dedicated to the brothers and sisters trapped behind enemy line. For those of us locked down in the belly of the beast of the prison concentration camps in America. This one's for you, family. Stay strong.
And we want to give a big shout out to all of our comrades behind the prison walls. We love y'all. Stay strong. Big shout out to Tank. Brother Tiba, brother, I'm coming down there. It's official. They trying to stop me from coming down there, but they can't do it. Brother Doc Emer, brother Kwawe, the people's champ. What's up, Aiden? How you doing? And all of the brothers behind the wall, brother Mumil Abu Jamal, keep hanging in there, comrade, brother Poindexter, the Africa family, and all the brothers behind the wall, Abdul, Shakur, love you, brother, and all of our elders, grandmaster teacher right here, brother Egpay, Baba Lukata, Mama Kundi, Asada Shakur, Mama Ayodele, and all of the elders doing their thing, and all the ancestors, we love you to Queen Mother Moore, Queen Mother Betty Shabazz, Yah Satawa, Queen Mother, all the Queen Mothers, and the freedom fighters from Malcolm X to Mario Abadeli to Nat Turner, and so on and so on. But we want to leave y'all, as always, with our battle cry, and that is
free the land, free the land, free the land.
See y'all again next week, y'all. Can y'all hear me? There we go. We just ended the radio portion of the show. Now it's just the social media part. But, I did want to take a couple of minutes. We got about 10 minutes left in the social media part. But I did want to take a couple of minutes to kind of piggyback on what you was talking about, because you brought up some excellent points about the culture in Africa.
Right.
Can you continue that?
Okay, so the culture in Africa has been arrested. There have been all kinds of ways that they have been. Oops.
Oh, it's gone. You good? Okay. That's how I had ended it, so they won't come out.
Right. Okay.
Right. Some gospel music just came on our elders' headphones. I know that distracted you. Yeah, what you were saying now?
Yeah. So Arrested, it was a group called Arrested Development. But this is what happened to our culture. Our culture had been arrested because when they took control of the African continent, based on them being able to take us from the continent and enslave us here, put us in chattel slavery. What they have done, they created a colonial system, and the colonial system basically limited the expression of African culture to the extent that free development was taken away. And so what we're talking about is the cultural phenomenon that we talk about development has to be a worldwide international uh, uh, development, because what we look at is when we look at the Africans in America, or the Africans in Brazil, the Africans in there are all kinds of divisions, Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And then when we go look on the African continent and look at Sudan and look at Chad and all the other African countries that are around that have been dominated by Arab influence to the point of trying to eliminate African culture. That's right now an attack on what's left of African culture. In West Africa and countries like Mali and Burkina Faso. And these are forces that are reactionary, religious, zealots under Islam. That have really nothing to do with Islam or the history of development of Islam. So now there's an attack on African culture, and we have to begin to understand that we are part of the development of the new African culture, and that's why we're saying we are new Africans.
Definitely.
So yeah, I mean, I agree with you 1,000%. That's one thing that I have noticed just on the continent in general. I mean, it's like a lot of just Europeanized individuals there, and sometimes we like to romanticize Africa. And understanding that, they have been colonized in many ways. They've suffered from colonization worse than we have, mental colonization. The colonized mentality is strong within the continent. I want to go to our social media. We are coming from my brother. I'm guessing this is a brother, Arletijo Castillo. I'm probably butchered your name, and I apologize for that, but I'm not familiar with that name right there. He said, we have to create economic, political, social, and even military blocks until the union of all of Africa is consolidated. Greetings from the island of Sao Tome and what's that, Principe?
Sao Tome. It's in the it's in part of the islands that were taken over by the United States.
Okay, like the Philippines?
No, I'm talking about right here in the Caribbean.
Oh, in the Caribbean. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right. So yeah, big ups to you. Thank you for tuning in, our comrade, and thank you for those statements. Actually, I agree with that, man. I think that's that's right on point. We do definitely. So thank you. And yeah, this whole idea of culture is extremely important. That's why the whole basis of what we're trying to do in the New African Independence Movement is, I think is New African Creed number, I forgot which number it was. I think maybe number 5, but it basically says that we suffer fundamentally because we lack the ability to control our lives. And we lack the ability to control our lives is because all of the institutions, systems, resources, everything that is used to govern our lives are controlled by individuals who have historically benefited, not even just historically, currently benefit from the exploitation of our people. And as long as those conditions, as long as that power relationship exists, then we're going to continue to struggle. We're going to continue to suffer. So ultimately,
what we have to do and what we are focused here on the New African Independence Movement is gaining power, real power, because it ain't just about gaining some money, trying to get rich under this capitalist system, because we got bourgeois black people who have gained a lot of money, but you don't see that translating into power within our communities. And I see you got another comment. How you doing, brother? He said, "Dear brothers, what's his name? What's that again?" Sao Tome. Yeah. You see, it's not a Caribbean country. It is an African country located in the western parts of Africa. Okay. Atlantic Ocean, Gulf, and okay, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for that correction. Our apologies, much apologies, but thank you. Hey, that's what we're here to do, to educate ourselves. And I always say that our audience is one of the most intelligent, politically aware audiences in the land. So we learn just as much from you as y'all learn from us, probably more. So thank you for that correction, dear brother. See, now I gotta go do some research on where you're from, so I know exactly what it is I'm talking about. So, but it's almost time for us to get out of here. So, you got anything you want to say in conclusion?
I think it's important. The question of culture, it is the most important element that we have to resurrect our culture, because if we don't resurrect our culture, we will continue to be under the domination of other people who are outside. And I hear a lot of brothers and sisters that have visited West Africa to talk about the influence of China, But the problem is we have to have control over our culture, so we understand what our relationship is, and just as China had to oust the Europeans and oust the reactionary forces, the African culture, has become to the point where we have to oust the alien forces within our communities, throughout the world, that are controlling our communities and controlling the minds of our people everywhere. And so, and that's why we have our people continually trying to flee out the conditions, economic conditions, to go to these the so-called colonial countries, former colonial bosses countries, because they are still controlling our resources in our community. And until we get our people to understand that it's only if we take a stand within whatever area we are located, then we will continue to be controlled from the outside, from whatever outside forces. Although I still believe that the relationship of China to Africa is more positive than it is negative, and make no mistake about that. But as long as we are weak, as long as we don't embrace the power within ourselves, as long as we don't embrace our true culture, we will be subject to whatever forces that come from outside to control us by taking over our resources and keeping us underdeveloped.
Well said. And I don't even know if I want to add anything on that. Just end on that note right there. But I will say this: that our culture is one of the most important things that we can have, because it's gonna inform us. It's gonna tell us how to behave, how to react, what our goals and our objectives should be. How to deal with conflict, how to deal with these police that come in. Your culture tells you how to do that. So when you have a killing, your culture tells you, okay, look, this is how we're supposed to react. I'll give you a prime example. I did a project with it's a place called the Amin Center. It's like a Muslim cultural center. And I did a video, a documentary with Muslim children who had been bullied after 9/11. And it was interesting that every child that I interviewed,
They was talking about, I was on the buff, and they did this, and they was talking about me, and they did, all of these things that they were being bullied. Every last one. At the end of them saying what the person did to bully them, it always ended like this. And after they did that, I punched them in the face. It was always some type of retaliation. In other words, you're not going to disrespect me. There is a consequence. And I just realized, in their Islamic culture, they don't be speaking that turn the other cheek. It's more of an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life within their culture. And you saw that within the children. And you saw that how they behaved and they respond. And when they said they retaliated, they said it with pride. Like saying, that's what I was supposed to do. Mom, aren't you proud of me for standing up for myself? So within their culture, it informed them to look, when people bully you, when people hit you, you hit them back. And you make them realize that there's going to be consequences for you hitting me. So, that's just an example of how culture informs and influences the behavior of a people. So we have to be careful. We have to be real analytical when we examine our culture and say, where did these things come from? And how does these, cultural elements affect our community? I'll give you another example of it. Right now, within the youth, if I go outside right now and someone jumps on me, beat me up, and do whatever, steal me, well, I can't, within the so-called street culture, I'm not supposed to tell anybody about that. I'm not supposed to do any, only way I'm supposed to handle that is I'm supposed to get up and I'm supposed to retaliate back against them, because they got this thing called no snitching within our community. And I'm like, okay, we understand that came from the slave plantation, because snitching on your fellow enslaved African could get them killed. It became as a means of protecting us against the slave master, against a system of oppression. It wasn't meant to be a protection for individuals who are predators within our community. It wasn't meant to protect individuals who were terrorizing our community. So, it's really important that we develop the culture that in every aspect is building up our community and supporting our community, and make sure that we are always moving toward the area of true liberation. And we could talk all night about culture, but we got to get out of here. We love y'all. Thank everybody for tuning in. Just like when the show over, everybody want to jump in on the show. So everybody who just jumped in, I see we got some people on YouTube. How y'all doing? Y'all drop a comment. Let us know how you're feeling. Let us know who out there, so we can come back and revisit this conversation. But join us again next week. We're gonna have us another great topic, and we're gonna continue to do what it is that we do in order to make sure we continue this journey of the liberation of African people. And we're gonna leave y'all with our battle cry, just like we did a minute ago, and that is free the land, free the land, free the land. See y'all again next week, y'all.
Free the land. Any means necessary. I'm Brother Zumbi New Afrika.
Opiemi New Afrika.
And we represent the Harriet Tubman District on the eastern shore of Maryland. We're here at Nation Day 55 here in Charleston, South Carolina.
Enjoying it. Here to represent the Harriet Tubman District on the eastern shore. And just want to commemorate and celebrate the 55th year of the PGRNA.
Right on. Time to break it down. Hey,
Tadra Jasiri from Columbus, Georgia. I'm with the People's Party for Independence. Our organization, we're standing on 5 principles of defense, education, economics, politics, and culture. And in doing that, we think if we can control these 5 principles, then we'll be able to keep the community safely and organized. And in keeping the community safely and organized, we know that we need to own, operate, and control the community. And in doing so, we think 5 institutions will help us, and that's a grocery store, a school, a hospital, a bank, and a community center. We've already purchased a community center. Next, we're going to implement a grocery store for our people. So we can all come together and unite to fight against all the ills inside of our community.